From his rise to the throne to conquering of the world. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out the history of Alexander the Great. Number 10. Alexander knew many philosophers. When you think about Alexander the Great, there's no doubt you think about the military mastermind who conquered much of the known world at the time. But the truth is that his mind was kept sharp in more than just one way. When he was young, his father, King Philip II, decided that it would be a good idea for Alexander to get to know some philosophers, and his mother agreed. And so he was taught by no other than Aristotle. And this was ironically before Aristotle made his name in the field of philosophy. While it is unknown what exactly was taught to him, it clearly made an impact on Alexander, and not just because of how he turned out, but because of how he interacted with another philosopher of sorts, Diogenes. He was a man who believed in the very basics of life, and was more than happy to do rather odd things in order to stay alive, because it was only the basics that he needed to survive. Alexander met him once in his homeland, saw his state, and asked what he could do to help him. Diogenes' reply? Step aside so you can stop blocking my sunlight. Instead of lashing out at the man, he complied, and noted later that if he had not been a warrior, he might be like Diogenes. Number 9. His father paved the way to his success. Alexander was very much a man who did things his way, and his tactics were a testament to his ability to read a battlefield and its commanders and determine what to do next. But to say that he was completely self-made would be foolhardy in the worst way. One of the biggest reasons that Alexander was a success was because of his powerful army, an army that he didn't craft himself. Granted, he did have to get new soldiers after many conquests, but the basics of his army was established by his father, who was not only king as previously mentioned, but also a military genius in his own right. He took the basics of the Greek and Macedonian armies and reforged them into something even stronger. The Greeks were known for their phalanx formations, a tribute to the legendary Spartans, but King Philip knew that cavalry, siege weapons, infantry, and more were needed to not only unify Greece, which he and Alexander did, but secure victory across many battlefields. While Alexander most definitely fulfilled his father's dream in many ways, it was because of his father and his military reform that allowed him to get such victories. Number 8. Alexander did not inherit the throne easily. Before we talk about his difficult journey to the throne, take a moment to like this video and join the Zero to Hero community by using the buttons below. Alexander the Great was many things, but a pure-blood son of King Philip II, he was not. In fact, his mother was from the land known as Epirus, and because of this, Alexander was half-blood, and in the ancient days, half-blood children didn't get the same rights as pure-blood children. So when King Philip II was assassinated by one of his own bodyguards, a civil war of sorts started up to see who would take the throne. Alexander was but one of many contenders for the throne, and this led to many bloody battles that cost many lives, including the lives of some of Philip's other wives and children, even including one daughter. Even when Alexander secured the throne for himself temporarily, he then had to fight off other rebellions to secure his position. Once those were dealt with, only then did he truly begin to rule. And the rest of that, as they say, is history. Number 7. Undefeated. You may have heard legends about how Alexander the Great was never defeated in battle in regards to his conquests, and that is actually quite true. This is one of the reasons that he was called Alexander the Great, because he was so great in terms of his military and tactical prowess that no one could honestly defeat him. For example, when he took on the Persians under the reign of King Darius III, Alexander found his troops outnumbered 2-1. But because of how he outfitted his armies with a powerful phalanx division that was 15,000 strong, and the Persians had no counter to their long spears, they were able to chop them down slowly but surely and eventually win the battle. For 15 years, Alexander the Great marched across parts of Europe and Asia in order to gain more lands for himself and his people. It was only after he went into India that things started to turn sour, but not in terms of losses, but rather his men started to rebel against him, and eventually he died of malaria at the young age of 32. It almost makes you wonder what would have happened if he would have lived to be 70 or more. Still, a decade and a half of victories is a lot to be proud of. Number 6. He wasn't well liked. The difference that history makes on our lives and the lives of others is paramount to the legacies we leave behind. There have been many rulers in history who have been reviled at one point for various reasons and yet respected and honored after decades have passed, and we were more able to understand all that they did or didn't do, or something in between. For Alexander the Great, well, let's just say his approval rating wasn't the best during his reign. In fact, to those he conquered, he was nothing more than a tyrant, one who liked to drink a lot and lay down with the various women that he came across. Heck, this is a guy who founded 70 cities and named 20 of them after himself. He was a bit of an egomaniac in some ways. Still, over the decades and millennia after his time on Earth, he's since been praised as a man instrumental in paving the way for the modern world, including getting much of the world to speak Greek, which helped many things in the future. He is also one of the most respected military leaders, and really, leaders, period, of all time. So as you can see, time heals all wounds. Sometimes. Number 5. He loved using psychological warfare. One of the reasons that Alexander was a brilliant military leader was because he understood one of the most basic principles of warfare. Might and men don't win every time. So he was not above proving to his enemies through psychological warfare that they had no chance to beat him and his men. Some of my favorite examples are ones like when he fought an opposing army that outnumbered him, but just before the battle, Alexander had a legion of his men go up to a cliff and stand right at the edge of it, signaling that they would go over with a single word from their leader. The enemy surrendered, because the commander knew that if the men were willing to go that far for him, they would fight to the bitter end to ensure victory for their leader. Then another time, he had armor crafted that made it look like they were worn by giants and planted them in the lands where he wanted to conquer next. When the enemy saw this, they felt they were doomed and they surrendered quickly. A man of brains and brawn wins more battles than a man who just has one or the other. Number 4. His army was unpaid. In the world we live in now, money is the root of, well, everything. From simple shoe shiners to the leaders of the world, everyone gets paid. Or at least if you're in a functioning job, you'll get paid. But back in Alexander's time, not so much. His army was so strict in their discipline that they fought for the honor of their commander. And getting paid was a luxury, not a guarantee. To circumvent this, parts of his army were allowed to go and plunder cities that they had conquered and keep a fraction of the proceeds for themselves. Number 3. The Gordian Knot. There are many legends and tales associated with Alexander the Great, but one of the most famous ones was that of the Gordian Knot. Most know the end of this story, but not the beginning. The knot was a famous puzzle, one that many felt couldn't be solved. But the legend of the knot grew when an oracle came forth and said that the man who solved the knot would go on to rule Asia. Alexander eventually came upon the knot and tried to solve it, but when he couldn't solve it by regular means, he pulled out his sword, cut it in half, and declared it solved. Not so ironically, this was during his Asia campaign, and though he didn't rule all of it, he did get a lot of it under his banner. Number 2. He looked and smelled good. Alexander was a lot of things, but one thing he refused to be was unkempt and smelly. In fact, he was famous for almost always looking at his best, outside of him coming directly from a battle, obviously. From his hair to his body odor, everything was kept in line and looking good. This was actually a tradition of sorts by the Macedonians. They felt that conquering kings should have attributes like the gods, meaning that they smelt as clean as possible and looked their best at all times. Alexander even washed his hair with certain ingredients to make sure that his natural color shined through, and in this case, he washed it with saffron to keep his hair orange. Number 1. He wouldn't have existed without the 300. The legend of the 300 Spartans is one that is rooted deeply within the history of our world. They were the ones who stood up to King Xerxes of Persia when his army tried to get revenge on Greece for what happened at the Battle of Marathon. And it was them who fought valiantly until the bitter end when they were betrayed and cut to ribbons by a surrounding army. But what is forgotten in that heroic last stand is the importance of the last stand itself. Because they fought the Persians for 3 days and paved the way in the fight against the Persians, the city-states of Greece realized that they could beat them if the circumstances were right. And because the Spartans and the Thespians stayed behind to fight the Persians on the last day, the remains of the Greek army were able to escape. Add that to Themistocles and his ships, and you get the remains of an army, one that wanted to finish what the Spartans had started. So, how does this tie into Alexander the Great? Well, if that battle didn't happen, Persia would have run roughshod over Greece, and more than just Athens would have been burned. The Persian army wouldn't have been forced back into their own lands. This would have meant King Philip II wouldn't have gotten his reign, and without him, there would be no Alexander the Great. History has a funny way of tying things together, don't you think? What do you think about Alexander the Great? Let us know in the comments below, and take care.